Hi, I have missed you. Hello, beautiful people of the internet. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Hannah if you're new here, and I am so excited that you joined me today. Long time, no chat. I kind of took a little bit of a break this last part of the year just because I really needed to. Like, there's something to be said about knowing when you need to step back from some things, and I did, and I feel so much better and so glad that I did that. But it also feels really bittersweet to be back and to be doing this space again. So I'm back, I'm refreshed, I'm ready, and I feel good about going forward. So for today's video, we're going to be discussing my top 24 of 2024. 2024 was a fantastic reading year for me, guys. I found so many new favorite books, so many like staple favorites that are going to carry me for the rest of my life in 2024. I'm so excited to be sharing these books with you. Let's go ahead and dive in. Before we get into the actual master list, let's talk some honorable mentions. So these honorable mentions are probably mostly series. I really tried to stay away from, oh, I really liked this series as a whole, and putting it in the master list. So I decided to talk about series in its own thing, and then we'll talk about just individual books for the real master 2024 list. These series that I'm about to talk to you about are stellar series. I recommend the series as a whole. And so let's go ahead and talk about honorable mentions. The first series that I want to talk to you about is the Seaside Cafe Mystery Series, and this is by Bree Baker. I unofficially buddy read this entire series with my book club, Comfy Cozy, this year, and everyone who read this series absolutely loved it. The first book is called Live and Let Chai, and this entire series follows our main character, Everly Swan, who owns a tea shop by the seashore. Say that 5 times fast. This is not just your average cozy mystery series, okay guys, because cozy mysteries have a cookie cutter, okay? We all know the cookie cutter of cozy mysteries. This one stands out from the rest because not only are the mysteries really good, but there is a subplot of romance in here that literally put actual romances to shame. You cannot go wrong with this series. The next series that I'm going to talk to you about is one that I have completely raved about, so you've heard me talk about it before, and that is the Natural series by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. I have talked my absolute head off about this series, and you don't need me to continue to do it, okay? But I will tell those few people that have not heard me talk about it. This is basically Criminal Minds, true crime, but make it YA. That is the best way that I know how to describe these books to you, because that's literally it. It's about these group of teenagers that each one has a special ability, and the FBI uses them to basically catch criminals. These are so fun. They're gripping, they're fast, especially if you're in a reading slump. I highly recommend these because they're so easy to get through and they literally hook you from page 1. I love this series with my entire heart and soul. I will tell you that the first 3 books are definitely awesome. The 4th book is a little bit dark, and if you're not expecting it going in, then it might catch you off guard, but just know that it does get a little bit darker as the end gets near. But this is such a good series, and I feel like really any reader who loves any sort of mystery or thrilling plot would love these. I am not gonna come on here and beat a dead horse, okay? But I have read the first 4 books in the Harry Potter series, and I have to rave about them one more time. You guys do not need me to come on here and tell you how good these are, but can I just give my opinion for a second? These are so good. They're just as good as everybody says, and if you haven't read these, highly recommend you do that as soon as possible. The next series that I'm going to recommend as a whole, I've actually only read the first 2 books, so does that count? Or the Selection series by Kira Cass. This is another timeless series that I feel like everybody has eventually talked about, but I'm here to give my opinion myself, okay? I love this series. It is full of Cinderella vibes. It's full of that forbidden love, and she falls in love with the prince. Do I really need to tell you anything else? Because I feel like that was a mouthful. It's time. It is time for the master list. Let's start with the top 24 of 2024, according to me. Let's get something straight real quick. Even though I am doing a 24 to 1 list where I'm starting at 24 and going all the way down to 1, These books are the most stellar books that I read this year. As of right now, I have read a total of 119 books in 2024, and these 24 books are the best books I've read this year. So don't get it twisted. Number 24 is not any less because it's 24. Number 24, We Used to Live Here by Marcus Clower. This has been all over the internet. And if you have not heard about this book already, let me be the first to tell you about it. This story follows our main character, Eve, and Eve is home alone one day when a family knocks on her door. And the dad tells her, hey, I used to live here. Can we look around for a minute? Just for nostalgia. And Eve lets them in and lets them tour her house. And the problem is they won't leave. Talk about going off the rails. This book never started on the rails, okay? There was not a rail to be seen around this book. Everything you think it might be, it is. This book had one of the craziest endings and one of the craziest plots that I have ever physically read in my life. So I feel like that's a lot being said about this book. I gave this book 5 stars. There were a couple of aspects that I didn't love about it, but the overall plot of this book was so good, and I highly recommend it. Number 23 is The Haunting of Ashbourne House by Darcy Coates. This was my very first Darcy Coates, and it would definitely not be my last. It's definitely been the forerunner of all of the Darcy Coates love that I have in my heart. This is a YA paranormal horror story all about this woman who inherits this crumbling haunted manor, and it's everything that I just said and much more. I am here to tell you right now. This is not a Scooby-Doo story. This is young adult, but I promise you this will scare the socks off of you. And I just so happen to love that. Coming in at number 22 is Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. This was actually my first Abby Jimenez that I have ever read. I know, like, where have I been? Under a rock, obviously. And if you know anything about the book community, then you know their love for Abby Jimenez. And I just had to try her out. And I am so glad that I started with this one because this one was so good. This book is an adult romance all about our main characters, Justin and Emma. And Justin and Emma believe that they are cursed. Just like cursed. They cannot find love. And so like, you're cursed, I'm cursed. Let's get together and date and maybe we'll have more luck. So they end up doing this fake dating sort of trial run experiment and things just progress from there. This was a top tier romance. The banter, the little gestures from each of the characters, especially this male main character, he was so awesome. Such a good romance. Coming in at number 21 is more of a controversial one because so many people in my life have read this book and hated it. And here it is appearing at my top books of the year. The Midnight Feast by Lucy Foley. I will die on the hill that this is a good book. This was messy, it was chaotic, and it was twisted at some point. But this was so good. I loved every minute of this book. This book is basically about this new luxurious hotel that opens up and then a murder takes place at it. And you're following many different perspectives that are trying to figure out what happened at this hotel and potentially other secrets that come along with that. I will say I had one gripe about it though. There was a ton, and I mean a ton, of language in here. So if that is a big buzzword for you, like stay clear from it because it was very, very distracting. I did end up docking a half a star or a star just because of the language. Otherwise, I think it would have been a 5-star book. I loved this book. I can't quite put my finger on why exactly I loved it. It was just a fun time and I really felt involved in the story. I thought it was very atmospheric and I thought Lucy Foley did a great job of inviting me into her story. So I might be the pin in the needle stack here among the terrible reviews of this book, but I really liked it. Coming in at number 20 is a book that really took me by surprise. I had no idea that this book would be so good, and that is The Clinic by Kate Quinn. This book is following our main character whose sister got checked into a rehab clinic, and then this sister supposedly unalives herself. But her sister is not buying that story. Her sister says there's absolutely no way and there's something fishy going on with this rehab clinic. And so she decides to check herself into this rehab clinic and find out herself what is happening in there. This was a crazy ride of unexpected twists and turns. And talk about feeling invited into this story. I felt like I was part of this story. The atmosphere, the eerie setting of the rehab clinic. Literally, this rehab clinic is on the side of a cliff. You cannot get more atmospheric than that. It was such a fun ride. Number 19 is also a controversial one, and that is The Secret Book and Scone Society by Ellery Adams. This was actually my book club's very first book club pick. Because of that, this one just has a really special place in my heart, but I also really loved this book. I don't 100% know what to classify this book as. It is not a cozy mystery. It is more of a woman's fiction story all about this group of women that come together over their trauma and over things that they've been through in their life, and they're learning to heal together. And I know that may not sound entirely attractive to the average reader, but I promise you it works. And there's like a mystery element to it, which is why I wouldn't really classify this as a cozy mystery. I would say that it was a literary fiction, woman's fiction, with a mystery element, because the mystery element takes a back seat to these women's relationships. Such a good story. I loved every minute of this book, and will definitely be continuing in the series. Coming in at number 18 is a book that actually recently came out, and that is The Spell Shop, and this is by Sarah Beth Durst. This book was an unofficial buddy read for Comfy Cozy as well, and I'm so incredibly glad that we read this beautiful book. I think that this is the coziest warm hug in a book that I have ever read. Everything that you possibly think this book could be, it is. It's cozy, it's warm, it's inviting, it's sweet, it's wholesome, it's everything that I wanted it to be and more. There's one sentence at the beginning of the synopsis that I really think that I need to read to you because it really captures exactly what this book is about. A lush cottagecore tale full of stolen spellbooks, unexpected friendships, sweet jams, and even sweeter love. Romance, coziness, food, talking spider plant. Do I need to say anything else? Number 17 is actually a nonfiction book, and this is Fervent by Priscilla Schreier. Priscilla Schreier is one of my top favorite people on this planet. I really think that she has a lot of wisdom to share with the world, and I just really trust her judgment and her teachings, and I really just love her. And so I knew when she wrote a book all about prayer and being in war with the darkness and the evil in this world, I was hooked. I was ready to read it, and I loved it. It was everything that I possibly wanted from it. I learned so much, and I really do think that it's going to be a potential reread for me because I think there's just too much goodness to get all in one time. I will say if you do decide to pick this up, I would definitely pick it up audibly as well as the physical book because you could make notes while you listen. I felt like that was a great experience being able to do that. The next book that I'm going to talk to you about is number 16, and that is Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter. This is a YA romance all about our main characters, Wes and Liz. And Wes and Liz have been childhood enemies. They hate each other. However, Liz really wants to ask this guy out to the prom, and Wes decides to help her. And things just progress from there. There is a lot of rom-com movie quotes in here and love song quotes and everything like that. So if you are a huge fan of just romance and just being in the moment with these characters and watching them fall in love, this is the one for you. I love Wes and Liz. Everyone knew that this was going to end up on this list. Everybody. My mom, you guys, God, everybody knew that this was going to end up on this list. Fable by Adrienne Young. This started my love of pirate things, pirates in general. I read this book at the beach, and can you talk about a more elite experience? This book follows our main character, Fable. And Fable, at a very young age, was dropped off on an island by her father, and he basically told her, survive. And if you can survive, then I'll come back for you. And here she is, grown up, and he's not coming back for her. And she decides that she is not going to wait around on her father to come for her. She's going to go find him. And this book is full of pirate vibes. All things pirates. If you like the Pirates of the Caribbean or pirates in general, Number 14 is The Magic of Lemon Drop Pie, and this is by Rachel Linden. This is my very first Rachel Linden, and I really went into this with a complete open mind, and I had no idea what was coming. This one follows our main character, Lolly, and nothing in her life has gone as she has expected. She hasn't crossed anything off of her bucket list, and she's really bummed about that. But when she turns 33, her great aunt gives her a gift, and this gift is magic lemon drops. And basically, she sucks on a lemon drop right before she goes to bed, and she wishes for the life that she could have had. And she gets to live that life for one day. This is cozy, this is wholesome, this is so sweet. It does have that classic, predictable plot. However, this is so good. Number 13 is actually a biblical fiction, and that is In the Fields of Grace by Tessa Afshar. This is also my first Tessa Afshar, and also only my second biblical fiction. I am still dipping my toes in the biblical fiction genre, and I'm not 100% how I feel about it yet. I'm still really loving what I'm reading, and I really adored this book. This one in particular is a retelling, so to speak, of the story of Ruth and Boaz in the Bible. I already love the story of Ruth and Boaz, and I knew going into this one that this one could only add to what I already love so much about that biblical story. I think what I love most about biblical fiction is that these authors do not look to take anything away from the actual story. However, it just enriches the already rich story that we all know and love, and this one was no exception. I absolutely adored this story, and it made me want to go back and dive deeper into the actual biblical story. Number 12 is also a newer release, and that is Nothing Like the Movies by Lynn Painter. And you're probably thinking, Hannah, that sounds familiar because you just talked about Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter. And you would be so right, my dear friends, because this is the sequel to Better Than the Movies. However, a lot of people hate this book, and I'll tell you why. Because Better Than the Movies is completely and utterly different than Nothing Like the Movies. And if you hear the titles, it tells you exactly what it is. Better Than the Movies is this sweet, fluffy rom-com that is almost out of touch with reality. And then Nothing Like the Movies is exactly that. Nothing like the movies. It is raw, it is rigid, it is darker, it is harder, it is more rough around the edges, but it's still Wes and Liz. And this story is just a continuation of their story. Things have happened. Trauma has occurred in both of their lives, and they have to heal as individuals. This story was one of the most beautiful stories that I have ever read. If you are open to the idea of it being a very rough story, and these characters have been through some things, and they have this mindset of they're angry at everybody, and things are not as fluffy as the first book. So if you were satisfied with the first book, I would completely just stop there. I love the two main characters, so I really wanted to go into this one. I loved this one with my entire heart and soul. The one gripe I have about it is the language, but it just doesn't take away from my love from this book. I loved it so much. It is crazy to me to think that I read this book this year because I feel like I've had this book in my head for years and years, and that is Murder Road by Simone St. James. This is the only book by Simone St. James that I have read. I loved it though. I loved this book so much, and I will hear not an ounce of hate about it. And that goes for all these books, okay? If you hated these books, please do not tell me, because I will hear none of the story. Love you so much though. This book is following a recently married couple who is on to the drive to their honeymoon when they stop and find a woman that is bleeding on the side of the road. Sadly, this woman ends up dying. That is not a spoiler, that's literally like 10 pages in. This woman ends up dying, and they find out that they found her on Murder Road. This is also not a Scooby-Doo story either. And I hear that Simone St. James does that so well, and I cannot wait to continue into her backlist. Dare I say number 10? We're in our top 10, guys. Here we go. You guys know that these are good. These books are good. Coming in at number 10 is probably my favorite Christian faith-based book that I read this year, and that is Love Walked Among Us by Paul E. Miller. I had never read anything by this author until I read this for my friend Keisha's Revive Christian Book Club, and really didn't know anything about this going into it. All I knew was that the little blurb says learning to love like Jesus. I did go into it wanting to learn how to love like Jesus, And that's exactly what I got out of it. What I loved most about this book, however, is that Paul E. Miller really does dive deep into scripture and uses specific examples of how Christ loved and then applies that directly to how we would love. He does such a good job of having that clear line of, here's how Christ did it, and here's how you can do it. And I absolutely loved that. I think every Christian could benefit from reading this book, just because I think, isn't that our life goal, is to learn to love like Christ? I really do think that I got so much out of this book, and I really hope that I will eventually reread this one. Guys, we're talking about my favorite books, and you guys know how I get when I talk about my favorite books. So I am not responsible for anything that I say or do. I am so excited to share these books with you, even though, let's be honest, you've probably heard me talk about these books already. So this is nothing new to those of you who've stuck around. Number 9. Belladonna by Adeline Grace. You guys have heard a lot of people talk about this book and a lot about this book series and how good it is. May I talk to you just for a minute how good it is? It's weird. Not even gonna lie about that one. It's weird. It does have a weird plot. This is about our main character, Signa. Signa can't die, okay? And she falls in love with death. But hear me out. Hear me out. There are so many moments in this book where I was physically screaming. And if a book can make me feel all those things, it deserves a rightful place in my top 24. Coming in at number 8. I love this book so much. Love Unwritten by Lauren Asher. I apologize. I had to change my battery because I talked too long about these books. Oh my goodness, and they just all fell on the floor. It's fine. No big deal. Where were we? Oh yeah. This book is book number 2 of this Lakefront Billionaire series that Lauren Asher has written. And I love and adore both books that have been written in the series so far. This one is following our main character, Raphael, and we met Raphael in the first book. This is in a romance with his nanny, and I know it's not as mischievous as it sounds, okay? This book is full of trauma. It's full of heartache. It's full of hard-hitting depth. That's what I need in a romance. I like my good short rom-com fluffy books that are out of touch with reality just as much as the next person. This, to me, is real life. Things like this happen in real life. And I will tell you that this one is a more open door book. It is Lauren Asher. I will say, though, there was a lot of depth that was laid down before anything happened. And that is so incredibly important to me, especially going into an adult romance. I really want to be rooting for the characters. And boy, was I rooting for these characters. Coming in at number 7 is a book that completely took me by surprise, and that is Binding 13 by Chloe Walsh. I just picked this book up literally last month, and it's this high on the list. Now, I really hesitate putting this book on here because I really hesitate recommending it. Not one of those romances that you were just going to giggle and everything's gonna be all right and just funny and cutie and fluffy, and this is not one of those books. This is not one of those romances that you're going to have just a good old grand time with. This is going to be hard to read, and I do have a slight issue with this being considered YA because this is not 100% YA to me. I'm not out of touch with the fact that I know this is how teenagers talk and respond and live their life. However, this is not YA fiction. There is a ton, and when I say a ton, I mean a ton, of foul language in here, whether that be actual curse words or locker room talk. There is a ton of that in there. But I said all that to warn you going into it because I do hesitate recommending this book to you. But if you can overlook all of those things, this really is, to its core, a beautiful, woven romance story. This is about 2 high schoolers that each have their own battle to fight and end up trying to come together and fight their battles together, and it's just the road and the journey that they have of coming together, and it's beautiful. But proceed with caution. Coming in at number 6 is actually a 6-star read for me, and that is Practice Makes Perfect by Sarah Adams. This is book number 2 in the When in Rome series that Sarah Adams writes. Book 1 is When in Rome, and this one is following our main character Annie, and Annie is this sweet, good girl. Nobody thinks that she's gonna do anything wrong, and she's tired of that because she can't find a man. She can't find love, and so she decides to get more of an edge. And so she asks our main character, Will, to help her with that. And so they go on this little fake dating experience where things just progress from there. Things happen in this book that were just absolutely swoony. I loved this one. This one is much different than the last 2 romances that I've talked about. This one is sweet, it's wholesome, it's cute, it's funny, so good. You cannot go wrong with any book in this series. And while we're at it, let's just talk about my second favorite romance of 2024. Foxglove by Adeline Grace. This is book number 2 of the Belladonna series. Book 2 was the best book in the series, and I don't think that book 3 is going to top this one. I really don't. When I tell you the quotes in this book keep me up at night, they keep me up at night. I absolutely love this story so much. It is a continuation of Signa and Death, which I know is really weird. That's really weird. I totally agree with you. But do not knock it until you try it, my friend. I promise you that. Give it a try and then we can talk about it, because I guarantee you, you're gonna be in the same boat as me. I can feel it. Coming in at number 4 is a book that completely took over my life in the whole month that I read it, and that is Something Wilder by Christina Lauren. This is my first Christina Lauren, but it will definitely not be my last. I loved and adored this book so much. This one is following our main character, Lily, and Lily's dad owns a ranch where he takes people out on treasure hunts. And Lily's dad gives her the ranch, and so she's in charge of it now. And she has a client who just happens to be her ex, and she is required to take him and his friends out on a treasure hunt. This is as crazy as it sounds, I can promise you that. There is so much that happens in this story. There is a couple of open door scenes, I will let you know that, but it's definitely skippable if you would like to do so, and it's so fun. It really didn't even read like an entire romance to me. It just was a fun ride, and I really liked the romance part of it. Okay. We're at the top 3, guys. Top 3 books of 2024. Let's go ahead and talk about the top 3. Coming in at number 3 is a book that has a proud place on my bookshelf. How to Sell a Haunted House by Grady Hendrix. I know, top 3, crazy. It's no secret that I absolutely adore Grady Hendrix. I have loved everything that I've read by him, and I really do think that his level of intelligence and what he puts in his books really do bring something to the table. Hear me out. Just hear me out. All the way through. All the way through. This is about our main character, Louise, who ends up losing both of her parents in a tragic car accident, and that is not a spoiler. And her brother are left to reconcile with all of that and also take care of their estate and everything that they left behind. Well, Louise's mom was a collector of many things, including dolls and puppets. Hear me out. Is this as creepy and crazy as you think it might be? Yes. Are there many scary parts of this book? Yes. Am I questioning whether or not that I should be recommending this book to you? No. I loved this book so much. Something you need to know about Grady Hendrix is that when he writes a story, there's something underneath it. And you really have to work hard to read between the lines. And when I say work hard, it's not like you're getting a pitchfork and knives and trying to dig deep. You just really need to go in with an open mind, knowing that there's going to be something else need to be said. When it hits you halfway through the book and you realize what is actually going on here, there's not a better experience. If you read this book and it hits you halfway through and you're like, oh, that's what's going on here, I need you to message me. I don't care if it's 2 o'clock in the morning. Send me a message right then and there. I'd like to know. Top 2. Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. I'm freaking out. Coming in at number 2 is a book that completely took me by surprise. And that is In the Edge of In Between by Lorelei Saverin. Let's talk about this book for just a second, because this book completely took over my life, and it took me a long time to get over this book. I'm still not over it. Obviously, it's book number 2 of my top 24. This book is a Secret Garden retelling. And if you know anything about the story of the Secret Garden, then you know that in that story, she loses her parents. And so it's a very grief-filled beginning of the story. And so this one is obviously a retelling of that. And our main character loses her parents very early on in the book. And in this story, there's a land of the living, there's a land of the dead, and there's a land of in-between. And basically someone comes to our main character and says, since your parents just passed, they may be in the land of in-between. And there's a chance that if you go there, you can see them again. I'm gonna get emotional talking about this book. Oh my gosh. No, I'm not. This is happy. We're happy. Give me a minute. I'm good. I'm good. Just give me a second. And in this story, there are people in the land of the living that are walking around in what's called the living gray. And it's basically people who have lost. It's someone who has lost someone and does not know how to move forward. And so their entire world is gray. They see no color. I have never in my life felt more seen from a book. This is a middle grade story. I have not mentioned that until now. This is a middle grade story that I completely felt my entire heart open on these pages. I finally saw someone put it into words what grief is and what it looks like and the raw, rough edges to it in this middle grade story. I'm so sorry to be a sap, but this book means so much to me in so many different ways, and I will reread this and continue to reread this. I will say though, if you have freshly lost someone, this is a hard book to read, guys. This is not an easy one. Like, I'm not even reading it right now, and I'm a mess. So I will say, if you've just lost someone and you were very early on in your grief, I would proceed with caution with this one, because I do think it's easier to read it when you've sat with your grief for a minute. So just a forewarning with that, but I give my entire heart to this book and recommend it to each and every one of you. Okay, now that we have gotten ourselves together, I am so incredibly ready to talk about my top book of the year. Oh my goodness. My top book of 2024 is a book that quite literally had me in a chokehold from the minute I opened up the book. And lucky for me, and lucky for all of you, I vlogged this book, and I vlogged my real life experience reading the book. So if you're curious, go back and watch that. But my top book of 2024 is Powerless by Lauren Roberts. Who is shocked? Raise a hand if you're shocked. Anybody? Nobody? Didn't think so. Once again, let's just look at the tabs, because I feel like they speak for themselves. They really do. This story follows our main character, Peyton, and Peyton is what they call an ordinary, and an ordinary usually lives in the slums. They are poor and nobody really pays any attention to them. And then we are introduced to our male main character, Kai. And Kai is an elite, which is the complete opposite of an ordinary. He is royalty, he is very high up, and he wants for nothing. And Kai and Peyton cross paths accidentally. And basically, Peyton saves Kai from this very weird circumstance. And the people see this, and they're kind of wondering who this girl is, but they just kind of go on about their lives. And then these Hunger Game-like games come up, and they are to vote people to be in them. And the people put Kai and Peyton in them. And Kai and Peyton are forced to be a lot closer in these games. This romance is one that I constantly think about. Like, you guys think that I'm joking. I really do think about them all the time. There is not a day that goes by that I don't think about Kai or Peyton or their banter or things that they've said in this book. I love this book so much and have recommended it and will continue to recommend it to every single one of my friends and to every single one of you. I think everybody who loves any type of romantasy or fantasy or romance should at least try Powerless. And let me know if you do. If you don't like the book, don't tell me. But if you do end up picking it up and love it, let me know. Oh my goodness. We are finished with my master list top 24 of 2024 books. And I am so excited that it's finally out there and we can talk about it. I'm really eager to know, what was your top favorite book of the entire year? I would love to know. And if you liked any of these books, or have you read any of these books, or are you interested in reading any of these books? If you are, let me know. All right, my friends, I haven't said this in such a long time, and I am so excited to be saying it today. But just remember, my friends, this world is a better place with you in it. And until my next video, my friends, I love you. Bye.